and the expert speaker is Professor Saurabh Mehta, and his topic is innovations in education, design, and deliver. So I would like to take the privilege to introduce him to all of you. So basically, he is a professor in Vidyalankar Institute of Technology in the Department of EXTC. He is also Chief Academic Officer there. As a CAO, he is actively involved in the designing of curricula, implementing academic planning and policies, introducing modern pedagogical tools and teaching methodologies. Uh, he he has collaborated and integrated initiated several academic and industry initiatives which facilitate several training programs for the benefit of students and faculty. So I personally know him that he is active in interaction basically with external world. He has taken several sessions in several workshops. So I would like to welcome Saurabh Mehta sir for our Atal FDP, and I would like to request you to take over and conduct our session. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Rano Deshpande, for your nice introduction. So, am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, so just I'm trying to share my PPT. Please allow me some time.
Are you able to share? I mean, the
Yeah,
option is okay.
are you able to see my
Yes, sir, your
PPT now?
slide is visible.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so before I start, I just wanted to apologize that I'm having actually a bit fever and then sore throat. So in between, if I'm coughing, so please excuse me. And so let me start with this thing. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you to SPIT team and this Atal organizing team, especially Sujata madam, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with all of you. So today, basically, I'll be discussing about like innovation in education, design and delivery. So how basically design thinking could be very helpful to all academia, because I know that whenever we talk about like the design thinking, always things come in that okay, when we have to design for some kind of like the product, or maybe we have to come up with some kind of like a services, that time design thinking is going to be very helpful. But I guess the design thinking is much more than that. It gives you very kind of like a clear thinking that how to make whatever, even the small slide that if we try to make, that could be like keeping in mind our students and our stakeholder, and we can make it in a better way so that we can communicate to them in a better way. So my journey with design thinking started in year 2000, I may say 17, yeah, 17, where I started to learn about design thinking. And I have taken like a several courses from IIT Bombay, then Coursera, EDX. So, and I found them, they are very helpful. And they actually gave me some perspective that, okay, this is how you have to look at, the basically the content design. And in case if you are making any kind of like a small, even the experiment setup, it gives a completely different kind of like a, point of view. So in that way, design thinking is really, really helpful. And I'm sure that if we try to adopt some of the principle of like a design thinking in our day-to-day teaching, or maybe in our academic exercise, will be very helpful. So I know that before we already, Rao sir has taken a very wonderful session. And I guess maybe his session was on product design. So he must have given you some a clear idea that how to go about like a product design. So in this particular session, I'll be talking and restricting my discussion only to academic related thing, and that too, especially when we have to design some assessment, when we have to design some kind of like a content delivery mechanism, right? So, and I just wanted to acknowledge. The IIT Bombay, Coursera, EDX, and there are many reports actually published by UN and many other like a technical and white paper. So through them we learned a lot, and then we try to add up some of the practices, and then we done several kind of like experiment at our institute. And so through that thing, the learning always enhances, and then understanding of that particular subject goes bit deeper, and we try to like adapt our learning into like a new designing and other thing. So let me just start with this thing. So today, basically, very briefly, I'm sure that all of you have gone through some of the key concept and principle, but this will be like a revision for everyone. And what kind of like a mindset is required by design thinker, right? And what are different kind of like a design thinking process, methods, and tools that we can keep it handy, which will be helpful to us in some apply those things in our academic exercise. And please feel free to interrupt me at any given point of time. And then any point you would like to interact with me, please feel free. I may not be able to see your chat because this entire screen is just showing me the PPT. So I may request host or Dr. Ramol that if in case somebody has raised any question or raised hand, so please let me know. So we can
Yes,
just,
sir. I will let me know.
yeah,
Also, sir, one more thing.
yeah, yeah.
You are not visible actually. I mean, if you
Uh,
are comfortable or
I am comfortable, but I'm not in a good shape. But still,
no,
let me just know, no
no
problem.
issues, sir. No issues.
Maybe start my as I camera also. Yeah. Now is it visible?
Yes, sir. You are visible.
Yeah. Okay. So please excuse me. I mean, as I said, like I'm going through some fever and then cold. So let me just share my screen again. So now is it visible, my PPT?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. In
Yeah.
presentation mode, we
Yeah.
can
Okay.
see.
Fine. Fine.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, so let us go ahead with this thing. So first of all, like few key concepts and principles for design thinking. So what is design thinking, right? So whenever we say that design thinking, it is nothing but basically a human-centric approach, right? So whenever we are designing any product, whenever we are designing any kind of like a services, we always need to think about our customer, or we need to, in general, that think about the human, that how this will be more comfortable to them, how it is going to add value to them. And it is also true for the academia also. So whether we are designing a question paper, whether we are designing like a lesson plan, or we are designing any new experiment, so all those particular things are really very important, that okay, this is the approach kind of you have to take, right? Making people want thing to making things people want, right? So these are the two different kind of things. So let's say if we are kind of like a innovator, or we are designing some kind of like a thing, so there might not be any particular need for it, but we always think that okay, right, by advertising or something, that we should try to make people to want this particular thing. So in many cases that approach might be the right, but in majority of the case when we have to think about it, so basically idea of design thinking is that we have to identify what are the pain areas, right? What are the key areas where we have to improve it, and where people uh, uh, can go about it, that okay, this is like if we try to solve this problem, it will be like more easy. To just give you one example, let's say if you are going through some kind of like an e-commerce site. So some e-commerce sites are very user friendly, right? Specifically, if you look at the Amazon, Flipkart, they're very user friendly. You can get all those information in a finger trip. And there are some sites which are not like very user friendly. You have to go multiple like pages to get the information. Sometimes those things doesn't wait. So these are called as a pain area. User experience is not good, right? So to make those kind of like a things making that people want is like a key part, and that's the reason some products, some sites, e-commerce sites are very successful, but not other sites are successful, right? So what is not design thinking? So as I said earlier, that design thinking actually cover lots of area. So somebody just think as a like okay, it is a visual design. So no, it is much more beyond a visual design or user experience, just limited to product design. No, it is much more better than R&D, not just limited to creative people, right? So design thinking gives you actually some kind of like a process flow that if anybody follow that particular process flow, I'm sure they can come up with some kind of like a good solution. So it is not a thing that is only left only to a creative people. No doubt about it that creative people can add much more value to that, but it is also that normal people like us, if we follow the certain kind of like a process and tools, we can also come up with some kind of like a really good solution which can satisfy to the people's needs, right? So this is very important. And it is not just a one-way process. Actually, it is like a continuous interactive process. So when you are coming up with some kind of like a design, then you take a feedback from the people, then again you make some improvement into that thing. So it's a continuous good process and it's a two-way process. So sometimes we feel that it is a slow process. Yes, it is true. It is a slow process, but it is also important that it gives you the complete like a customer satisfaction, or you can say you are actually uh, satisfying to all your like the process owner. And also it is not just a brainstorming process. So if we look at all this particular like aspect, so it gives you the picture that thing, okay, the product design should be there, R&D should be there, then the process should be there, like two-way process should be there, visual thing. And I have just picked up like a few points, but there are many other points that also need to be included into design thinking, right? So design thinking gives you a very clear idea about each and every aspect of this thing. So many a times when we try to talk about one particular, it's maybe an application of a design thinking over there, but it is not defining the design thinking, right? So that is the thing that we have to keep it in mind. Okay, now this particular picture I have taken from actually Google Images, and I think already somebody has Center of Design. If I'm not wrong, it is from the Oxford University. So very nicely they have actually give three different kind of like the concept. Okay, that what is research, when you design some kind of like a concept prototype, and when you uh, think with the design thinking, right? So when we are in a research mode, so obviously there are many back and forth kind of iteration goes into that thing. You can see with this kind of like a diagram that thing, right? So lots of thinking goes into that. Then again we come back to like our drawing board, then change the design. Then again we go back to making a protocol. So and lots of idea actually generated over there. So you see that there is a lots of clutter over there, right? So when we are so there are many uncertainties, then you can see many insights over there will come. And as we slowly move towards like a designing a protocol, our thinking start like with a more clarity. And then you see there is a less kind of like a clutter and this thing. And finally, when we are going towards like a design thinking and this thing, it gives a clear direction to us, and a very concrete idea that what basically we wanted to do and how basically we wanted to do. So that shows with the like this clear and focused mind, right? So as we are moving from the research to design, our thought process becomes more clear, more focused. So that is a very good thing. So these are some of the benefits of design thinking. So this is a very nice picture which actually summarize the concept of like a design thinking. Now there are many industrial application also. So sorry, yeah. So many industrial applications and many companies. So here I have taken like a few examples from internet, but there are multiple examples, right? So you can see that some companies are related with a product, some companies are related with like a services, right? So just for example, now let's say the Starbucks, they come up with this new idea that okay, instead of like paying through your credit card or a cash payment, so we design some kind of like a mobile app, and through which you can easily pay. So you don't need to actually stand in a queue and waiting for your particular order. So I mean, it can be like taken care by the mobile application. So this is a perfect example where company has identified what are the pain areas for the customers and how to particular like stores. So and the result of that, you can see that thing store lines move 10 to 20% faster, right? So user get like a very short waiting time, and then they get a service very quickly. So that's the advantage. So that means you are adding a customer satisfaction to that part, right? So then another uh, thing is about like a Apple. So if we visit any kind of like a Apple store, so right, they conduct so many different kind of like activity just to promote their particular like a product, right? So because of that thing, the engagement of our customers becomes very high, and then this particular engagement actually helps them to buy for those particular product, to let them experience those particular like a product. And I am sure that this particular idea and concepts taken by many other companies, and they have also developed this kind of like the retail store. So this is a one particular like a good example where you are not pushing customer to the buy the products, but you let them experience that what are the products, how basically they works, and try to involve them in the story of Apple, then try to involve them into the basically the products and their features, and then taking feedbacks about that thing and make it very successful. Then third example, very good example is that like Procter and Gamble. So we know that Procter and Gamble, they make many actually consumable item, right from the washing machine powder to so different kind of like the products. I mean shampoo, wash, and everything. Now the one particular the pain area that they have identified is that the many working people, they have to wash their clothes, and then when they put their clothes in the machine, they don't know what particular like a quantity they need to put it in the machine, right? So they come up with the idea that why don't we design some small kind of like a ports, so which actually have the proper measurement. So you just have to open it, you put it in the machine, that's all. So this is some kind of like a new product for them, and also a great satisfaction to the customer. And similar to that, Adobe, we all know that provide lots of different kind of like a services to us, right? Related to document formatting, PDF files, and this thing which we use day to day life. So they have moved to their entire solution on a cloud base, right? And then that to a subscription model. So it depends that if I do not want it the license for a long time, it's okay. I can just pay as per my need, and then from wherever I am on whatever device I'm still able to access to the documents and this thing, right? So these are some of the areas where design thinking actually help big companies to make their revenue or customer satisfaction level to a next level, right? So if we look at the framework of a design thinking, we see that thing basically we have to think always. I mean, any product or any kind of like a services when we are designing, we are thinking that okay, is it going to be viable for my business, or it is going to bring me some kind of like revenue, or maybe a customer satisfaction. Then if I'm offering this kind of like a business to somebody, and to make this particular business, I'm going to use a technology, right? So whether the technology is feasible or not. So many times it happens that certain technology which requires some you know big investment, or maybe the infrastructure, so that may not be the feasible, and because of that entire product or a service is not going to be visible, right? So very clear example of that is we can see the e-commerce in India, right? So once the Geo actually made that all data rates and everything is like very cheap, and each and everyone have access to the internet, automatically the boom comes to that particular like a business, right? And obviously the people desirability, or we have to identify those kind of like persons like a pain area. So if we combine all these three, so there is a very small interaction which actually brings the innovation. And if we try to address those things, then obviously it it's going to be like, the key part of it. So entire basically the design thinking is telling us that. So we have to focus over there. Okay. So in design thinking, so once we start from the research area and then we are going to like, the finally to validate it, or let's say the some of the designers or how the engineers actually think. So as an engineer, we always think about like a reliability, whether it is a safe, it is a proven. So lots of analytical thinking goes into that thing. We rely on data, right? We rely on lots of experiments. So we gather all those data, we analyze those data, and depends on that, we say that thing it is a reliability. When it comes to like a designer, it's more like an intuitive thinking that okay, if we try to make the handle not like this but in a different way, it will be more the same, right? So and the designer always try to bring user experience, and they always wanted to add wow factor. Oh wow, this is amazing, right? But when we have to take a design thinking, it should be reliable as well as it should be uh, validated, or you, as we say that X factor need to be added. So it's a 50-50% mix. So it's a very good combination of like the engineers and thinking. So if we see in many of the product development or any kind of like a service development, so the product development team consists of engineers as well as like a designers. They all comes together, sit together, do lots of brainstorming and discussion, and finally come up with the idea which is more reliable as well as validated. Okay. So what is basically a mindset of design thinker? Yeah. So whenever we have to think about a design, always we have to keep user as our center focus. That okay. So if I'm designing any kind of like exercise, so who is going to use that exercise? Whether it is a students, whether the students employer, or whatever, let's say in academia I'm trying to do. First of all, I need to think about the user, right? And then I need to ask the right question, that okay, whether the students are going to use it properly or students are not going to use it properly, whether the message that I wanted to convey, it's conveyed properly, or is there is any kind of like unclarity in my message or any kind of like a thing, right? And obviously we have to believe that we can deliver those kind of like the problem solve, or we can come up with some kind of like a uh, design to that thing. We have to commit to the explore, then prototype and test. So first of all, we have to identify the problem, and then when we try to solve the problems, we have to take lots of input from our stakeholder. Even we have to take input from our like a user, and that's the system which make it as a like a two-way process, right? So lots of like a divergence happens. So once it's reached to its peak, and then we try to come up with certain conclusions, some of kind of like a learning, and our thinking start to converge to one particular like a solutions. Okay, you come up with let's say 5 solutions, then you check with its SWOT analysis, and then finally you decide that okay, based on that thing, okay, this solution is the more optimum, and then final one, right? So we try to converge our thinking to one particular like a solution, right? So this is always going to be the cycle for any new kind of like a design that we wanted to make. So first it will come with the diversion, and then it will go to the conversion, right? So in between, then lots of interaction, lots of interaction. Let's say in terms of academia, we discuss our basically the subject plan with lots of experts, our peers, and even experts from the outside our institute and this, right? And then finally we come up with some kind of like a final design which is going to be the best for our students. Why? Because we have kept our users as our center point. Okay, so this particular like design thinking process has been given by the Stanford Design School, and it is very well accepted all over the world. And I think it becomes like a base for any kind of like a design thinking, right? So they have given this 5-stage basically idea that first and very important thing is to empathize, right? Empathize with the user. You do the interview, you do the survey with the user, try to identify what are basically like the pain areas, and out of that thing, what you try to do is that thing define certain problem, right? What is basically objective? Why I have to solve this particular like a problem? So we need a proper definition. Then you go to idea generation. Okay, so now I have a problem with me. So how I'm going to solve this particular like a problem? What kind of like a information is required, what kind of like a solution that we need to provide to them, right? So and then lots of diversions and conversions happens during this particular stage, and then finally after converging to one particular idea, we go for a prototype. So once we develop with a prototype, it is pass it on to our user. Then again we try to get their feedback, and then we do lots of like a field testing, and then again we come back to like the ideation stage, and then try to make it as a more and more like kind of like a revision into that, and then make sure that it is like a properly followed, right? So it's basically a non-linear system where continuously you have to go from like back and forth, and then you see that thing where you're making mistake, and try to make sure that whatever the system that we are following, it is properly defined, properly done, right? So this is where you can see there are like 5 stages, and how they connected with this. You can go to test. Sometimes your test results are not good, so again you go back to like your first step of empathizing, right? Whether we have talked to a user in a right way or wrong way, right? So this is very important when we finally go to want to define stage. So from each and every stage, you can go back to the previous stage or the next stage, and so that's the reason it is basically a non-linear process. So these are some of the concepts that we have to keep it in mind. So now, if I have to summarize this entire concept in a short, I can say that thing it is divided into like the multiple kind of like a 10 basically area. So here you can visualize that thing, right? So again you can see that thing from here we are starting. It is going to converge again, go, then again conversion again, kind of like this thing. So first and very important, we ask what is it, what if, that if we try to do this thing, what is going to happen, and what is wow factor into that, what works for it, right? At every stage you can see that thing, you come up with some kind of like the outcome. So when you are talking about what is it, means it is like a journey mapping, then value chain analysis, mind mapping of a user, you try to talk to them, then you come up with like the design brief. Okay, so what are the pain area, how we have to like put it into a proper like engineering terms, so that our engineers can understand to that thing. And once it passed through that thing, we come up with a design criteria. Okay, so design criteria means what? Okay, let's say for one example, our user wants something for some winter season. So okay, they would like to have a temperature of around this to this particular area. This is what they are expecting during the summer time. So all that design criteria basically we have this thing. And then finally out of that thing we come up with some kind of like a solution. So in the solution, we obviously we do the SWOT analysis, whether it is a right, wrong. So we also call it as a napkin page basically, right? So need, approach, benefit, competition, various parameter we basically, and then finally it goes out, and then we say that there is a learning at, okay, if we have provided that, so people are not preferring that thing, so we have to make some changes in our design, or maybe in approach, or maybe in our business model, and then again come back to that part, right? So these are some of the key area that we have to keep it in mind. Okay, so now let's come back to, I hope that so far that we try to cover like what are some of our like the challenges that we I mean what are the some of the key principles and concept in design thinking. So I have not gone deep into that thing. It itself is required like many other sessions, and I'm sure that maybe on a first day all of you will cover that in more detail. So then we'll move to basically today's topic, that how we can apply those design thinking into academia. And when we are talking about academia, what are the basically challenges that as a like a, the teachers we are facing, or maybe the students they are facing, or our employers of the students they are facing, right? So there are many challenges. So some of the challenges that I have listed down over here, maybe we can all can take up on certain kind of like the challenge, and we can start working on it. A very important one is engaging students, right? So nowadays, and especially in a COVID time, that from last I guess maybe almost 2 years, we are taking all our classes into online mode, right? So initially online teaching was appreciated by everybody, but slowly we find out that thing, the engaging students in learning, it's extremely challenging online, right? So students they keep their mic on and then they just disappear. I mean, they log in into the system, they disappear, whether they have learned or not learned. So we don't know. So engaging students is always a challenge, not only for online, even in the offline mode also. When we have a 60 students and to involve them in a learning, it's a really tough job. So this is, I think, a very standard challenge that and a very prominent challenge that we all face, right, as a teaching fraternity, that how to engage the students. So our basically all activities actually move around this particular problem, that we have to make sure that whatever we design or whatever we make, so that students are actually engaged into that thing, right? So then second one is that thing, content making, right? So we all are making videos, we all are making like audios and ppts and different kind of like a study material. Even many of us are making a MOOC also. So when we are making a MOOC, so we have to make it in such a way that thing, that it is always going to engage the students, and learning actually comes out as a outcome of that particular exercise, right? So this is really important. So how to make a good content making, then the same thing is for the feedback, right? Feedback, or you may say the assessment, that whether okay the learning has been done or not, or what is a the effectiveness over like a delivery of our like a content. So that we need to check, right? So feedback as well as assessment is extremely important. So how to design those kind of like a feedback assessment, so that we try to get an honest opinion from our students, and that actually help us to tune our like a content making, or maybe whatever the examination, or maybe whatever the exercise that we are designing, so will be helpful to the students, right? Then lab is again like a really big task, that uh, in especially when we have to check in online mode. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so when we have to teach the students in online mode, okay, maybe for a computer and IT, for those particular like a soft branch, I may say. So for them to conduct online practicals and other things will be bit easy. It's not like that it's not difficult, but compared to the core branches like electronics, telecommunication, instrumentation, right? So in those branches, mechanical engineering, conducting a lab online, it's like have certain limitation. Okay, few things you can take it on like simulation, and then few things you can take it on some kind of like a software, or by giving them a case study. But are those experiment actually helping students to develop some kind of like a skills, right? So this is a really big challenge. So how basically we can try to make sure that whatever the exercise we are developing will be helping our actually students to develop a lab, or to make sure that learning start to happen. Then understanding of students mindsets is also very difficult. I mean, sometimes it is uh, really hard. I mean, that what basically like a student want, or how to encourage students actually, right, to engage into our learning activities, and how we are able to help. And this actually varies from like the professors to professor. I mean, many of the professors are very senior. They have learned this technique. I mean, throughout these years. But for many young faculty member, it becomes like a challenge. Is there any kind of like a process that we can set, so we can try to understand the student mindset, and according to that we can try to provide them some more customized kind of like a learning to them, right? Then we also want that students should be like engaging in a collaborative work, because when they go to any practical work, so they have to work in a team, right? So then again, how to design those kind of like a collaborative activity, or how I may design some kind of activity which encourage students to do the collaboration among themselves, and then they try to do this thing, right? So recently I may say that thing. I mean, I was talking to like my students, and so when they were like in India, so they always like come for your advice that okay, how to do this thing, how to do that thing, and when they go abroad, I mean suddenly their language changes, right? So if you try to discuss with them, so they use this particular sentence very often, that I'll be figuring out, or we'll figure it out. So that shows a complete different kind of approach. I mean, so what is there that we are not able to generate this kind of like a mindset in the students, right? So over there, when they start using this word that I'll be figuring out, or I'll figure out, or maybe we'll be figure out. So this shows that okay, they are willing to work on a problem, they understood the problem, and they'll be solving this problem using their collaborative skills, right? So how we can try to bring those kind of like the changes in students mindset, so that's a big challenge. Then sorry, infrastructure and technical part is also this thing, right? So how we can try to create our infrastructure, technical labs, or maybe some kind of like a technical infrastructure in such a way that it will be very helpful to the students, right? So I'll give you one particular example. I mean, so earlier we used to have like a many open source uh, sites and hosting sites basically for our Moodles and other things. But then generally we get the feedback from the students that it is not very user friendly, and then whatever the problem comes, we are even not able to solve this thing, kind of, right? So then obviously this actually prompt us to go for some kind of like a commercial services which give us a very better kind of like the infrastructure technical support, and then this thing, right? So this also makes a lots of difference. Then students, they do not have a complaint, they easily engage on particular like a connectivity and this thing, right? And then lack of connect, whether it is an internet connect, whether it is like a, the attention connect. So this is always a thing. And obviously nowadays because we all go through like NBA, different kind of like assessment body, they always ask one particular question: innovation. So what is this basically innovation? How we can bring our innovation in our regular practices, right? So these are some of the challenges that I'm sure that all of you have also identified. We have also identified that okay, these are some of the challenges. And is there any possibility that if we can try to take design thinking over there and solve this particular like a challenges? Yes, there are many ways to solve this particular like a challenges using a design thinking. So maybe I will be sharing like a, the couple of examples over here, and also some our own learning and experience with all of you. So then I'll take you through this thing. So let us begin with this thing. Okay. So for that thing, what are the different kind of like tools we have? So we have a content delivery tools. I'm sure that each and every institute might be using like MS Team, either a Google or maybe the Zoom. So and many other tools are actually available. So that is many of the institutes, they have actually acquired some kind of like assessment tools, right? Some softwares which actually help you to take exam in a proctor mode, non-proctor mode, or in a better way, like feedback tool, teaching platforms tools, MOOC adaptable, then delivery model strategies, right? Whether we should keep it something as a like a hybrid mode, whether we have to keep it as a completely online. And I'm sure that many of you are using like a flipped classroom concept, Then if we do not have the lab facility, can we convert our lab into like a problem based learning or research based learning? So what are those? If we have to develop like a virtual and remote lab, so can we do this thing? Yes, we can do this thing. And then there are many tools actually available with us, so we can utilize those things, right? So if we look from the tools perspective, we have tremendous things available on net, and many supports actually available to us, so it could be very easy. But then challenge comes. As I mentioned earlier, so the engagement part and all those things are very important, right? So this tools doesn't guarantee you that the students are going to be engaged into your activity, or students are going to be like engage in your experiment, or maybe they start working in a collaborative way. So these tools are there to help us, but ultimately it is come down to us that how we actually design our experiment, or how we design our lesson plan, so which actually engage the students with a proper kind of like a learning, right? So this is really important, that tools, obviously it is required. Without tool we can't do anything. But apart from that tool, or based on that tool, we also need to apply this design thinking to solve those particular like the challenges, right? So I hope that I made my point clear. Okay, so basically design thinking also gives us like completely a new approach to the academia. So if we look at the traditional approach, where basically we are more into like syllabus oriented question and answer, or we ask the students to do the report writing, and that, and whatever they generate, basically it is a no use of to society, right? So in a new approach, I mean, uh, obviously using a design thinking, we can come up with a good beyond syllabus activity, which actually help us students to uncover the syllabus. I mean, our part is to cover the syllabus, but I think even more important is to uncover the syllabus. So that's creativity, or you can say the curiosity of the students is like in top gear, and then they start learning by themselves. So safe learning is activated. So this is very important. And now we see that thing, our students are more actually engaged with the social media. So we also need to try to use those media in our like the learning. So that could be a tool to us, but how to use those tools in a proper way, that is up to us, and that is where the design thinking comes in. So then PBL, RLBL. So when we try to do this kind of like approach, it is going to be very useful for our society, in the sense, if let's say you are generating some kind of like a content, so that content is not just restricted within the your college or this thing, it goes beyond that. Let me give you one example. So actually I experimented this thing, I mean, from 2016 onwards, yeah, 2016 to up to 2018-19. So I was giving one particular assignment to my students, that in that assignment there are two kind of, actually it's divided into three assignments, that instead of doing a traditional kind of like the report writing or questions or anything, that I give them the option that you can go for like a Wikipedia article. So you can write something on a Wikipedia article. So that helps the students to, first of all, how to write a scientific information, how to reference those things. This is very important. And then, as you know, that in Wikipedia, that I mean, many basically the people who actually look at your article, they give lots of comment into that thing. So even if you have tried to copy it from somewhere, immediately it comes into like plagiarism report, and it will be notified to the user, right? So all those things come. Now when you are writing something on a Wikipedia, so it is not just restricted to your college, it is now, it's actually given to the open domains, right? So many other people who is able to read to that thing. Now many students, they first of all find that, oh, it is very difficult for us to write like Wikipedia articles, especially when it comes to like English. So then I gave them the different option, that why don't you like convert it in technical, I mean, our subject related few articles that I generally noted down, so those article into a regional language, right? Because now you see that many people, are coming on the internet, and then there is a language divide. So we also need to come out with this challenge, right? So they write their own language. I mean, in any of their native language, right? So because those articles are not there. So right now you see that on a Wikipedia left hand side, you will see that same article might be available in Marathi, same article might be available in like Hindi, so different language, right? So and especially if you look at any technical article, very few like articles are available in regional language, so that you can do. And then many students actually, Wikipedia also have one subsection is that a photo video. So sometimes you give them assignment, right? So one particular assignment right now I recall is that I asked the students of for a different kind of like the antenna and where it is application. So they need to go into the field, try to click those photographs, and then put those different type of antenna together on Wikipedia. So then that will be there for a reference. So this is one example that if you create this kind of like the assignments or something which is going to benefit to the society. Now this is seen by so many people. It is not just within the boundary of your college, it goes beyond that thing, right? Yeah. Okay, so another very important aspect is that, I mean, so when I look at it, MBA or maybe any other thing, so mostly we follow the Bloom's taxonomy, right? So the Bloom's taxonomy is like a de facto that everybody actually use Bloom's and a revised Bloom's taxonomy to define their course objective and then defining their course outcome, learnings, and this thing. So actually, design thinking helped us to, not just to look at the Bloom's and revised Bloom's taxonomy. There are many other actually taxonomy. So we try to apply those taxonomy for a different purpose, whether it's a short course, whether it's a long course, whether you are providing this particular training for an industry. So obviously you have to go through the different kind of like a taxonomy. So in that case, whether we should apply to the solo taxonomies or whether we should actually do a fins or maybe six facets. So these are different kind of like a taxonomies are there. So itself is takes like a different kind of like a lecture to explain about that thing. But these are some of the very thing. And then Kirkpatrick model that we are using for evaluation and then for particular like a training when it comes to like a teaching opportunity. So this we have to keep it in mind, and then we can utilize those things. We do not need to strict this thing. So design thinking also helped us to look at those particular like ideas that okay, that beside like Bloom's, revised Bloom's, reverse Bloom's, these are some of the very popular kind of like a taxonomies that we have to keep it in mind. And when we are designing any particular like exercise or a lesson plan, this actually helped us a lot. Sorry. Okay. So going further, so then about like a mood challenges and this thing. So before that thing, let me just show you the detail basically that keeping this design plan, we have come up with some kind of like a lesson plan. So that we use this particular document in our institute. So lots of actually thinking has gone into that thing. And then obviously day to day, then we are actually, improving on those particular like, so document. And the reason is that we wanted to make sure that our students are getting the best benefit out of it. So I'm sure that all of you are able to see right now my document. So I'll be taking you like very quickly through this particular kind of like a plan. So we call it as a academic administrative plan. So am I audible or this
Yes,
is
sir.
visible? Yeah, this
Is
document is
visible.
visible. Okay. Yeah. So this one particular, I may say the example of design thinking that okay, when we have to design our lesson plan. how it should be. And obviously maybe somebody will say, oh, it's a long, but it is a one particular like a document. So let me take you through the process also, that how we actually do this thing. So before we make this particular or fill this particular like a document, so we do the 2 days pre-workshop on that. So what is that 2 day pre-workshop on that thing? So there is going to be a cluster. Let's say some few subjects are within a cluster. Just for example, microcontroller, microprocessor, that becomes like, I'm just giving you one example, becomes like a one cluster. So the teachers who are actually teaching those subjects, they come together, they have lots of like a discussion among themselves, and then they decide on certain kind of like points, that okay, that this kind of like the things that we need to impart to the students in this particular like a coming semester. And then there is a master lesson plan prepared by those teachers, and this will be circulated to the students, and this gives a very clear guideline to the students that what they are going to expect in this coming semester. And let's say it is also a very detailed plan, that okay, today if I'm attending, or if I'm able to miss particular like, let's say, experiment or maybe a lecture, how I'm going to like get a relearning of this thing. What are those kind of like the revised like a thing, and in case if I'm missing, what are the extra material that I have to. So this plan when we design, so we make sure that it is catering to all different kind of students as well. It is also helping us to the advanced learner, and it is also helping us to like the slow learner and the average learner. So and so each and every set of students actually find something out of it. So and then when we have to create some kind of like a satisfy some NBA or maybe NAC. So that particular points also covered within that thing, right? So then it's one particular document gives a clear snapshot that what we have to like do in this particular like a semester, and students are also very clear about it, right? So and then we have a different kind of like a repository and that thing. So where basically you are going to able to find those kind of like a document. We float lots of value added courses during the semester and after the semester also. So to satisfy certain kind of like skill set which we are not able to cover within our like a syllabus or this thing. So we go beyond that, and we float some VAC courses, MOOC courses. So how students can do it, and what are the some courses we can refer from outside. So nowadays NPTEL is a very good platform where students go, they get the certificate, right? So I'll quickly take you through this particular like a form. So this is actually the result of, I may say, a complete like a design thing, right? So here you can see that thing, right? Course objective, what are those course objective, considering the cognitive, effective, behavioral model, and then some of the advice to the student. So here we keep enter like then this thing. Then we also decide on a collaboration policy, that okay, we try to encourage the students more on like discussion, doing something together. And then obviously this course outcome which we try to follow from the NBA guideline, then mapping of those particular like a course into like the different kind of like a PO, then it goes to the PSO. Now teaching examination scheme. So some, as right now we are under Mumbai University, so we have to follow certain like a Mumbai University guideline, right? So then we say that this course is related to like mathematics, basic science, humanity, or soft skills. It's a core engineering, or it's a multidisciplinary, right? So we write about that thing. Then the particular like a schema about that thing, examination schema about that thing. Then let's say we have like multiple faculty who is taking those particular like a lecture or a practical. So which faculty is going to take when this is going to there. Then those faculties when they are available, right? When there are slot time available, when that completely time is dedicated to the student, so student don't need to wait for any kind of like the prior approval or something. They can directly go and meet to them. Then we obviously write this particular like the thing where how much weightage is given in the university about that thing. And if you are have to prepare for this course, is there any prerequisites course required or it is not required? So after doing this course also, whether there are some future course or some advanced course are there which students can take it, right? Then identify basically a real life scenario that okay, and then this real life scenario, if I'm teaching something, so which particular concept is actually related to that. So then idea of that subject is more clear to the students, right? So similar to that, what is basically the past result, so we can come to know that thing that okay, that this is like our like a target that we have to follow on this thing, right? So each teacher who has taken like a different I mean the vision, so what results they have tried to bring, because from that thing you can analyze that thing, okay, so this teacher might be helping us in this particular concept, in that particular concept. So cross sitting of that thing is also possible during that time, right? And then what are the textbook author publication, and it is related to which particular like a module. Then there are lots of like a references, so which could be like a given to this thing, right? So then uh, related to that, what are the top research paper, so that we can give it to the students, right? And then what are the current like a problem statement, based on that research we can give it to like a student, so that that you can even convert it into your quiz, assignment, lab, mini project, poster present, anything you can put it anything, right? And then what are the companies and this thing. So this is generally prepared by the teacher, so that students know that thing, okay, that okay, these are some of the companies which is going to they are using this particular, just for example, AI or ML. Okay, so which are the companies who are actually working in AI ML, whether they are giving any kind of like student internship, and then placement, and then faculty internship. So to whom which we can like a contact, whether they have December, I mean, to connected or not, right? So who are the top guest speaker that we can try to identify for this particular like a subject, which can bring like new perspective to this particular like a subject. What are the technical competitions are available related to this subject, or maybe to this cluster, so that students can actually take part into it, and tentative dates about that thing, right? Then what are the top schools who are teaching those kind of like a subject, what methodology they are using, what kind of like the publication they come out, whether it is like for them to follow or not. Then there are different kind of like the web links and module available to them, refer to any top rated university for that particular like a content. Let's say I found that okay, in MIT this particular course is really good, or this module is really good, so I can mention about that name of the faculty, and I can also give the complete remark on that thing, right? So then you can see that thing. As a teacher, if I need to prepare for this particular subject, so am I done some kind of certification? So if this information goes to the students, students are more attracted to you, that okay, oh, sir has already done this certification, so in case if this any question or any doubt, so students are more encouraged to enroll themselves into some kind of like a certification. And this also help us to showcase our own like the specialty, or you can say our command over those particular like a subject, right? So then different kind of what pedagogy that we wanted to use, how we wanted to do, then subject content, what are the best practices that generally some different university follow, and are we able to take those things. Then what are the different kind of like a web link, or notes, YouTube, that we can actually give it to the students to see them. Then we mention about like a modules, are we referring to them any kind of like a MOOC courses, right? So those MOOC course also say, we suggest over that, right? And then this is a complete consolidated lesson plan where lecture wise and module wise entire plan will be there, so students are more clear then what could be the rubric for marking and this thing. So when we give this idea to the students well in advance, they are also prepared that okay, this is what we are expecting, this is what is expected from us, this is how we have to like perform in this particular like a class, right? Analysis of class assignments and this thing, right? So all teachers, they do this particular exercise in 2 days workshop, and based as an outcome of that coursework, outcome of that workshop, this is the lesson plan that we prepared. And this is a common for this entire like the group of teachers who are teaching the same subject, right? So practical activities, regular experiments, then some newly added experiment, new kind of thing, then whether we have added any PBL experiment, so which concept, what kind of thing beyond syllabus activity, right? So there are, it's a very detailed kind of like a lesson plan, and generally we give this particular like a lesson plan to like this thing. And let's say somebody has actually taught this subject earlier, so we also take their input on this thing, right? So this one particular example that I just wanted to show you, it's again the example of like a design thinking. So after lots of like a brainstorming, taking input from the students that okay, we are missing over this particular part, we are not able to like getting this particular information. We have, when we try to go on a Google, we get lots and lots of information, but we don't know which one is the more suitable to us. So if we give them this clear like the guideline, it will be very handy for them, and their engagement actually improves on that thing, right? So this actually a complete kind of exercise of divergence and convergence, so that we are following. So this help us to prepare our lesson plan in a more better way, right? So now coming to the second particular like a part, that MOOC challenges, right? So generally when we go for the MOOC challenges, so what we find is that that a lack of connect, lack of any constructive feedback from the instructor, right? Because once you record it and then you put it on this thing, and so it is always going to be one-way communication. Students generally don't get any kind of like the constructive feedback, or even the quiz is taken right or wrong, but why it is right, why it is wrong, that also need to be like tell to the students, right? So and then obviously then there is a you see that thing in many of the MOOC at the beginning. So many students are enrolled, but if you look at the final outcome, only few students actually pass and complete their certification. So many of them actually lost their interest in that thing, right? And also lack of authentic context is very important, right? So this is a particular like a challenges that we follow in a MOOC. And nowadays like many of us are actually preparing our videos, putting it on a YouTube, or maybe we are creating our own MOOC, so where we follow. So in this case we try to follow this particular like a framework. Actually it is proposed by IIT Bombay, and it is very nicely done. And we have done many modification into that thing. We have included some kind of like a more learning by doing activities and learning by doing and our things, right? So what are those elements to the MOOC? So this particular framework is come out of like a design thinking, that after talking to lots of stakeholders, going through many basically like video and this thing, that we come up. So there are called as a 5 basically elements. If it is not there in your MOOC, then the engagement of students is going to be at a very average, or I may say a low levels. But if you try to include those elements into this thing, it can improve the engagement to the high. And then enrollment ratio and pass out ratio is going to be like a high, compared to what enrollment ratio is always high, but then pass out ratio is always low. But this framework actually help to improve the pass out ratio also. So what is that? So basically you have to divide into learning dialogue. So whenever you are preparing any kind of like a video, it should be a short video. Ideally if you can complete your video in 5 to 6 minutes, it's good. But in any case it should not go beyond like 8 minutes. And when you have some many multiple kind of like a concepts, so you divide as a capsule video, right? So that is what additional things that we have done in our MOOC also. So we try to make it as a capsule video. We take one particular like a concept, and that concept is easily explained within one particular like 1 to 2 minutes. That is a maximum limit that we keep. So that goes as a short video. And in that short video, to reflect upon the learning, there should be always a reflection point. So we also use those reflection point in our concept video. Then learning by doing. So in that learning by doing, okay, once you see this particular like a video, there should be a formative assessment. It could be a multiple choice, or maybe some kind of like a feedback or something. So then they give the answer to it. So that makes sure that the person has gone through the content and try to give this exercise and engage into the particular thing, and they also get the basically the feedback on that, right? Then the learner experience interaction, so where more focused kind of like a question will be given to them, and discussion forum will be given. So basically open-ended kind of like question goes to them, right? And then obviously so far whatever they have learned, they have to give some kind of like a reflection quiz, right? So learning extension trajectory. So over there we try to focus more on diversity, various resources, then assimilation quiz. So lots of like the reading material we give. Okay, why don't you read through this? These are some of the good papers published in IEEE or maybe in ACM. You can go through it. What particular point that they are trying to utilize there or highlight there, right? So those kind of things comes as a learning extension. So this is really good for the advanced learner who are more focused into that thing. And then finally connecting all this particular like the elements is the interaction of line by taking a feedback, communication line establishing. So if you design this entire book based on those elements, so then it makes like the more I may say the pass out ratio, right? Successful, right? And so obviously when you have to go for this thing, so this is a very TPAC framework which is already given in many references. And so basically there are content, pedagogy and technological thing, and then obviously when we are referring to that thing, it is like itself is answering to this thing. So again, this is like a bit complex, but what I try to bring it to your notice is this, that even when we are making some kind of like a simple video, there are certain frameworks, design process available to us which we can follow. And if we follow that thing, some kind of like the good feedback or maybe the engagement could be guaranteed. So again, it takes like another kind of like a different separate discussion slot for it. So just quickly I wanted to take you through this thing. So we follow this particular like a framework with our own adaptation to that. As time passes, we also get lots of feedback from the students and the faculty members that okay, this is where we need to make, right? So changes where one or two couple of things that I wanted to tell you is that the feedback that we got it from OHU student is that they find some English word as a very difficult. So why don't we give even the meaning of that in their like native language or maybe in Hindi? So that will help us in that thing. So that is one thing. Then including some kind of like those quizzes into the term work will help students to engage more into that kind of like a MOOC development. So that also we have taken into consideration, right? So likewise, many actually things comes to us, and then we keep improving on our like the MOOC development and other things, right? So obviously for that thing we follow Bloom's taxonomy as one standard kind of like a methodology, because these are actually meant for entire semester long courses of this, right? So where you can see it is divided into different parts where to construct. So construction comes when you are working on apply analyze part, then content comes on like evaluation and creating something, right? So which is actually taking care of like your teaching knowledge, then your pedagogical knowledge, your content knowledge, right? And all these things actually comes together, right? So now coming to the third part, assessment. Now assessment tool, as all of you know, it's really important. And in assessment, obviously we have many questions actually, right? So how to design a question paper in such a way that it is not too easy for the students, so that it is just a cakewalk for them to like just to just go to the platform, give the exam, and then they are coming out of like the flying colors. No, that is not an objective. The objective is that students should learn something out of it, and they should be part of the learning, and then that is what we have to engage, right? So why we take basically the exam? Generally to take a feedback. We wanted to know what students know, or whether we wanted to know what they know, right? or what we wanted to know from the students, right? So these are some of the prime reasons for taking those particular like exams. So when we have to go for assessment, it is good that if we follow this five principle. What is the purpose of taking the exam? Whether it is authenticated, the questions that we design, or it is not. Whether it is a fair and reliable system for each and every of our students. Is this test actually help students to go bit deeper into the subject and try to learn more out of it? They know what is the gap analysis of their understanding, right? So they understand something in that way, but your question paper prompt them to go and learn little bit further deep into the subject. Their clarity of understanding is improves, and then is it manageable and it's efficient, right? Sometimes we are taking a test for only 20 students, right? Just for example, let's say I teach to PG students, and then I also teach to UG students. So PG students, generally we have a batch of 18 students. Nowadays even getting 18 is a bit difficult, but let's say around like 10 to 12 students are there. And then for them I can go for different kind of like a test, because it's a manageable efficient. But when I'm uh, going for the undergraduate, I also have to keep this particular point, because generally undergraduate students are large in number. So whatever the paper that you design, it should be manageable and efficient. Because if it is a you design question paper in such a way that evaluation is going to take a time, then students, they get interest out of it. I mean, they lose their interest because they are not getting a very quick result, right? So it is also important that we gave the feedback to the students in a proper time frame, so that students do not need to worry about and then actually helps them to encourage more about their particular learning, right? So these are I'm sorry, five principles that we have to keep it in. So what are the different kind of functions of assessment that so by the way, these are some of the processes, right? Okay, feedback, grading, selecting the students, influencing the students whether they're satisfied or not, completing the learning process, accountable to external stakeholder, right? So when we have to make sure that assessments actually have a tick mark on basically those particular functions. Obviously test wise and the purpose wise that may change, but this is really important, right? And then we can come up with some kind of a utility formula. So this entire actually process has been given by University of Hong Kong, and in their teaching. So that reference I have mentioned in my uh, last slide. I'll show it to you. So they have given very nicely this particular part. If you wanted to know what is basically the utility of any particular exam, so you need to, I mean, check it on this five parameters: reliability, validity, educational effects, acceptance, and cost. Now, each and everything we cannot add up to our system, because, as I said, we are still under Mumbai University, and then we have to follow our summative examination is actually taken by Mumbai University. But yes, we do lots of experiment with the test and everything during the midterm, or generally like a class assessment, formative assessment. So that time it's very useful to us. So whenever assessment we need to design, we have to make sure that it is covering this entire a triangle. So learning outcome assessment, and based on that thing, to achieve that learning outcomes and assessment, we have to make sure that teaching learning activities are designed in such a way, right? So all these things are connected with in such a way that it is necessary to have those designing principles over that, right? So what is assessment? Basically a cycle. So you design your question paper, you construct of that particular the design obviously required a discussion, then coming up with some purpose, and then the finally the outcome. Then based on that thing you construct your question. Then constructing, then you decide on the conduction methodology, how I wanted to go, whether I wanted to go it as an open book, closed book, as a short term quizzes, or different kind of this thing. So whether I wanted to go for how I'm going to evaluate that, how I'm going to gather some kind of a feedback for this. So that is very important. So this is very important, and this is assessment. Just a second, I wanted to show you something over here. Let me just check. Okay, so I'm sorry, I do not have that actually paper right now with me, but anyway, so let me just go through those particular cycle. Okay, so evaluation and feedback, assessment analysis, learning and future planning. Obviously, I mean, from each and every exercise, we try to learn something, and we try to gather the feedback also, and then that we apply in our the future planning. Okay, this time we wanted to take this kind of a examination, or if we add those particular point in our examination, could be more better. So this is the complete assessment cycle, right? So it starts from the design and it ends at the learning, right? So this is also basically nothing but a design thinking. It's required lots of thinking, lots of a preparation, then and each and every point. I mean, there is lots of a divergence and convergence, right? So generally, for a post graduation, when we have to design a thing, so I have a group of peers, I mean, things. So we do lots of a discussion on that thing, and then finally we decide on our methodology that okay, this will be, and then we try to follow that thing, analyze those things, and then we propose those kind of a methodology to do the assessment, right? So obviously, models we already know what is summative test, formative. Formative could be a direct, indirect, right? So these are the models actually available to us, and then we can simply use them. And then tool wise, if we try to see, so what is open book, closed book, viva, takeaway, multiple choice, then discussing, then I mean, then we have essay type, group type. So when to use which kind of exam tool is really really important. So as I told you that before the beginning of the particular the class, we do this workshop, and during that workshop we discuss a lot about this particular tools also. So it is also based on a module, as well as it is based on the midterm examination or a final examination, that okay, how we are going to teach this particular, and we have to emphasis on certain kind of a thing. So what we can do about it and how we can do about it, right? So then certain tests required that we have to check whether the students have good flair of a writing, see, and scientific writing when we say about that. So that time essay type kind of a examination is very important, because that is a generally people think that as an engineer we do not need to work on writing and all this thing, but it is not right. In fact, the latest survey shows that majority of the engineers, they spend 60 to 70% of the time only on making a proposals, making a the different kind of a paperwork, and because of that 70 to 80%, within 30% they are able to achieve certain big kind of test. And then we also conduct lots of a group test. So I generally conduct, I mean, let me share my example with you. So I conduct basically two type of examination with my ME students. So one is a takeaway kind of a examination. So when I design a takeaway examination, so I allow them whatever kind of help they wanted to take, they can take it. Whatever resources they wanted to do, they can do it. So mostly when I gave them the takeaway kind of examination, it is more on like a open-ended question where there is no particular like a solution. There could be a multiple kind of like a solution. So I give them like the one day. So they take the I mean, so there are several kind of like a questions given to them, and maybe few students they get a common question as well. So they pick up certain like open-ended question, they take it with them, and then they take entire day and they have this all the resources, everything available to them. So they go through it, they come up with their own idea, their then own kind of like a solution, and then other this thing. And then in the next class we actually discussed in each and every solution. And believe me, I mean, while this particular like a discussion, many of the students actually get their like the basically the problem statement for their master thesis. So that okay, this is what the problem we wanted to take for our like master thesis. So this is a very good achievement as far as self-learning is concerned. So they get like lots of self-learning. And then I also take a very often open book test. So in open book test, I tell them well in advance that this is going to be the open book test. In fact, that is also mentioned in their lesson plan also, that means week so and so there will be open test book. They can bring whatever the resources they want, but this is going to be in a basically closed door. Means within a classroom they can actually have to sit individually, and then they have to try to solve particular like a question. So when it comes to open book, more kind of like a designing question, again somewhat like open, not completely open ended. Obviously there are some solutions, but yes, we gave them some this solutions to them, I mean sorry, questions to them, which require like lots of like a reading and this thing. So if they have gone through the reading material, maybe solve those particular problem will be easy for them, right? And same kind of like a open book test is even given in the group also, that okay, they are putting in a team of like a 3 or a 2 member, depends on the number of students, and then they have to work towards particular things. So this kind of like a test I apply mainly in a lab learning. So where we try to give them some kind of like the problem, and then I ask them to implement those things in a software, or to use whatever tool, whether it's a software or I mean, software, open source software, any software, and then they have to do this thing, and then they come up with some kind of like a solution, and then we have a detailed discussion on that thing. So what went wrong, how it need to be done, and those kind of things generally we do. So these kind of like examination tools helped us to improve the learning of a student to a lot, and then that basically reflect into their feedback and this thing. So for me, takeaway, examination has lots of like the advantages, but only thing is that we need to design those kind of like questions very carefully, right? So that is very important, right? So now another very important aspect for any teacher is to like do the mentoring, because I know that mentoring is like an integral part of like our part, right? So that mentoring could be like support to the students, helping to set them the goal. Sometimes they are down, so we have to motivate them, we have to give lots of like a direction to them, training, right? So mentoring is really important. So again, when we have to go for like a mentoring, how to go about it, what are the things that we need to follow, are there any kind of like a framework? Yes, there are many frameworks actually available for the mentoring as well, right? So those framework we can take it as a this thing. So how this framework comes in? So obviously the reason is that comes after lots of brainstorming and like design thinking, and then we have come up, right? So mentoring could be of a two type. Maybe it could be a non-academia or academia. So nowadays many of the teachers or faculty members are also involved into like a the consultancy, or basically they are involved with the startup of the students, right? So that we can categorize as a like a non-academia. So where a faculty member could be involved there on a commercial basis, even on non-commercial basis, and sometimes they are like just self-motivated, that okay, I just wanted to be a part of that, I can help the student. And in academia, basically, the mentoring comes for the faculty as well as the students. So we have a two type of like a mentoring part. One for the faculty members, especially when any young faculty member comes in, when any young faculty member comes in. So they are assigned to senior faculty members, so that that faculty basically the settling into the institute becomes very easy. They know where to go where, I mean, for what particular like a facility or something like that. And then it also helps them to develop their particular like a design and those kind of like a thing. So this is really important part. Then obviously for the students we have to be there. Sometimes it is a non or a self-motivated, but we have to take care about that and make sure that uh, they are motivated enough to take up on those different kind of like a challenges, right? So the challenges that generally we face during like this is what we hear from faculty member, that okay, I do not have experience to mentor the students try to bring with lots of kind of like a questions, unexpected questions, maybe related to their family, related to their personal life, and that's correct. I mean, we all are not trained for that thing, right? And we do not have one experience with that thing. Then no guidance, no guidance is available to us, no fund is available, no kind of resources available, no emotional support is basically available. Generally, the students, they tell to the thing that okay. And so one particular thing is that we have actually appointed some counselor that comes to our campus twice in a week, and they spend I think half day, uh, that is twice in a week. And so whenever the students, we feel that it is like they are emotionally not stable, and then sometimes students come up with us, or maybe when we do our mentoring session, we see that students is depressed, or so immediately we forward them to their application or papers to like a professional counselor, and then generally they are open up with them, and then emotional kind of like support. So even for the research facility, the networking part is not there, time management, how to do all those things. So these are like the big challenges that generally we actually hear. So our challenge is that how to solve these challenges in a better way, so that mentoring could be like done in easy way. So there are many models available to it, but we try to use basically this three kind of like models: talent progression model, MCD model, ABCD model. What are those? We'll see that later. So what is basically talent progression? This thing. So we generally give them okay, that okay, smart model. Okay. So what is basically like the model? So this kind of like a model is proposed for very the active students, or who are like the fast learner, or who are ambitious, or I may say the self basically motivated kind of like a thing. So for them we try to figure out what kind of like goal that they are looking at, based on that thing, like skill set that they need to develop, what kind of mindset that they need to develop, right? And then what could be the action plan that they have to follow, and then based on that thing, the result time bounded, and that how we have to do. So basically providing the platform for skill development, mindset development, it is basically mentor's responsibility. And obviously they need to follow this plan, so then we can get the result, and also in certain kind of like the time limit. So that is like a mentee's responsibility, right? So matching with these two things, it's become easy when the students are self motivated, right? So over here, continuously check on that thing, or missing on their responsibility will be like a less kind of thing, right? So this is we call as a talent progression model. And then MCD model, obviously. So M for managing, C for coaching, and delegating. So advantage is that it is like the task based. I mean, yes, obviously when you have to do the mentoring, the one very important thing is that we need to learn is that we do not need to be like judging, right? I mean, We do not, and nobody actually likes to be judged by other people. So that thing always we have to keep it in mind. So in that case, we have to take the students through different stages: managing, coaching, delegating, right? So, and obviously it should be based on a task, right? So when students first comes to you, or let's say your younger peers comes to you, so we need to put them under like a close supervision. So there is some kind of like a control. You have a direct kind of like a interaction. You give them the instruction, or more it's kind of like one way communication. No, you have to do this thing. This is going to be like a good for them. Then obviously we have to tell them on each and every phase, no, you are doing this in a wrong way, you have to do it that way. Continuously provide them basically the feedback. So once they move ahead from this thing, then what they require is a coaching, right? So what is that? Okay, we just need to give them the hint. Okay, if you do this particular like a task, it is going to be like a very useful to that. So it's a feed forward. We have to involve them in certain kind of like activities. So generally I involve some students in our research work, or in kind of like the teaching pedagogy or something, to get this thing. So they feel like, oh, I belong over here. They feel responsible for that thing. Then we give them opportunity to develop, encourage, listen to them, support, facility, awareness, basically, right? So it is more like a giving them a completely like a free hand. And once you have a develop a confidence, even your mentee has developed a confidence, you go for the finally like a delegation. Okay, this is the task, you have to do it. How you do it, what you need to do about it, that is completely your thing. But when you have to do the delegation, we have to make sure that there is a accountability, responsibility, support, and obviously you have to praise their effort and everything, right? So these are different kind of like the stages that generally we see with like a students, or even with a young faculty. So that also need to be followed. Then ABCD model, it's identify the ability, and then believe on them, then try to connect with this thing, and then finally you then dependability. You say, okay, that okay, this person is going to do this particular task, and then you develop some kind of confidence into that thing, right? So, and it's ability, that whether result oriented, you have some expertise into that thing, you have the ability to problem solving, performance generating, or whether you have some kind of like a skill building or not. So then believability means, are you ethical enough to give your result? I mean, giving a result is a good thing, but not at the cost of like the values and the integrity of any organization, right? So yes, admit mistakes, sincere, response and respectful, no blame game, take responsibility, acts with integrity, never condemn. Right? All these points actually needs detailed discussion, but I think we have many points to cover, so I'll be going bit quickly through all those particular parts. But over each and every part, I mean, we have actually involved lots of like a design thinking into that. Based on that, we come up with a different kind of like the forms and other things. So caring, empathetic, communicator, listener, right? So that is how the connectability is there. Dependability is reliable, organized, responsive, punctual, accountable, consistent. So then only you somebody will depend on you. They will value you, that okay, if you do this thing, this is how you have to do it. And so we need to prepare the students in this way only, because when they go into their practical life, all those things are going to matter a lot to them, right? So this entire basically the process is that how we do basically the mentor-mentee process into that, right? So first of all, like raise awareness about what is basically the mentoring, how the mentoring. So we generally tell that okay, mentoring is only taking care of students. That is one part, or you have to conduct frequent limiting. No, it is much more beyond that. So proper awareness need to be given, and luckily now AICT has also started so many programs related to like the mentoring also. So that is also like a very important. So that awareness that we need to do, then have to have proper kind of like a training workshop for the mentors as well as a mentee, and it could be a separate, or it could be like in some part it could be this thing, right? And then we need to float application, who would like to do the mentoring, and to the students, okay, who would like them to be as a like as their mentor. Then there should be a proper matchmaking process, and finally informing mentor and mentee, and then then they can decide on their first meeting, second meeting. So generally we encourage at least 3 meetings in a semester between the mentor and mentee. So if this particular process is being followed, it's always a good, and we are getting really like a good response for this thing. So it's not completely yet I may say implemented, but we started with a small group of people and this thing, and then we are really getting like a good response. So now we'll be taking up to like a the higher scale on that thing, right? So so basically if we look at this entire process, is that like initially it takes some time to build a rapport, then setting some direction, then finally you have like a progression, then finally wind up. And so generally we make sure that once the mentor is assigned to you, that mentor will be there with you from the first year up to the last year. So the one person take care of your, and they are actually knowing in and out about your progress, and then about this thing. So to taking some kind of action also, it becomes like a very easy. So that's how basically this particular like a process works, right? So then I just wanted to show you some kind of like a different methodology that people, how they have implemented, how they have designed their particular like mentoring form. So this is by Brick University of London and Upboard. So this is our basically like a form. So we divide into like the three part, right? So students is facing any particular like the advanced students, that okay, if they have a potential, they have a skill, so we set a goal for them. And if they are not very clear, we actually take a professional help to set a goal for them. Then we also look for their financial concern needs to be referred, what we need to do. And then there is any emotional, so this emotional part is completely taken care by like the professional counselor at our college, right? So this way we try to implement this thing, and then we try to like showcase this thing. And then beside that we are doing many new initiatives. So let me also show you one particular like a paper that recently actually we have published. So over there I'll just, so this paper was recently published, and so basically it's a case study. So what are the new kind of like innovative teaching learning practices? Finally our aim is to go for a OBE model, right? Outcome based basically education. It's the buzzword nowadays, right? So what are some of the initiatives that we have taken, and what are those things? And there are also some critical reviews for that thing, then there are criticism for that thing. Obviously for anything always you get like criticism as well as like some favorable. So we try to analyze those things and then apply. So I'm not going to like take you through this entire paper, but this and still there are many actually learning is with us with results, and that we would like to publish as a like a case study, so that it will be available to like a wider audience. And that, but it takes time. So this particular paper is focusing during the pandemic time. We have taken certain kind of like a new approach for this thing, for education in part. So one particular point that I just wanted to highlight over here, that we tried new kind of like a timetable with us. So that timetable means what? The course will be floated by multiple like a teachers, and then student can choose, I mean, to which particular professor we wanted to take it for that particular. And then the main objective was that give a complete freedom to the students. And then also we wanted to break the silo. So generally when we are working for MBA and all this thing, somewhere the silo comes into our mind that I belong to like telecom department, I belong to like a computer engineering, so I'll be not offering any kind of like a class to another branch. But that is not a true. Learning should be happen with the best faculty available to us. So that also help us to break this particular like a silo. So that was basically our like learning. And obviously when it goes over there, the main criticism was that many students they could not select to a one particular or a group of like faculty members. But why? So that is also analyzing point for us, and how we can improve on that thing. So for that we have started to give some trainings to them, then also try to make sure that where that gap is there, and if we overcome this game, overcome this particular gap, it is going to be like more better way to do this thing, right? So these are some of these things, and maybe if the organizer permit me, so I'll also share this particular paper with all the participants. So if you are interested, maybe all of you can go through those things. So now considering our the time limit and some of the new initiative that we take at this thing, so we go for like infographics, and then we encourage students to write blogs, and then even I write my own blog, then interactive boards. So this is a new innovation that we have done. So this is actually by sound and light, students try to bring some concept for a learning. So then you can take quiz on that, you can take feedback on that thing. So that is on QR case based technology, right? So there are many this kind of thing. Then we extensively use like this small embedded board, using we do lots of like projects Arduino board, and I'm sure that all of you. Then we started with our internet radio also, because we our aim is that to establish our own FM radio station, but it's a long way because there are many actually the government permit and everything is involved into that. So by that time, can we start with our internet radio? So it will help us to do some cultural program, technical activities, education with fun kind of like activity. YouTube channels are already there. So then this particular project I started with the students. So I converted that as a like the research based or problem based particular like learning. So it's a kind of observatory that we have set. I have some interest in astronomy as well. So with this is a radio telescope that we have built. So through this radio telescope we try to observe the sun and the basically sun and the Jupiter and their activity. So this is like a 20 meter of this antenna that we have set up with the students, and then through those things students are learning the electronics, designing of a circuit, designing of filtering and all those things, right? So these are some of the things that we do at our institute, and these are some of the references, I mean, the images or something that I have used in my PPT. And then I have some really good some course suggestion if somebody is interested, so they can go through those courses. So RITX, Rochester Institute of Technology, they give wonderful this micro program. Actually, it covers I think 4 or 5 basically courses in design thinking. It is available on edX. Then design thinking for innovation, University of Virginia, that is available on Coursera. Innovation through design, it is again by University of Sydney. It is available on Coursera. You can go through that. And then there are many actually courses that are available on Coursera and IIT Bombay X. So all of those things actually helped me a lot to understand about the design thinking and its application into like the academia. So these are some of the courses that I wanted to suggest. And with this, maybe we can open our floor for question and answer. And in case if you would like to connect with me, so this is my LinkedIn profile. So nowadays I'm a bit active on that thing, and this is my email ID. So in case if you would like to connect with me for any collaborative activity or this thing, so please feel free to connect with me. So once again, I just wanted to thanks all SPI, entire SPIT team for organizing this Atal FTP and inviting me for sharing some of my experience with all of you. And thanks to Kulkarni madam and then Amol sir for providing this platform. Yeah. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Okay, so participants, if there are any questions, please unmute yourself and ask.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I am Archana Deshpande from Thakur College of Engineering.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, really, it was an excellent session by you, and you rightly said that having incorporated the open-ended questions in the academia and uh, the activities in the academia will bring the design thinking approach in the academics.
Mhm.
But sir, sometimes I feel that in the lower level, that is in the maybe in the first or second year level, uh, how to bring this design thinking approach in the academics, because there you have all basic subjects
Mhm.
and all the fundamental subjects are there. So can you put light on this, sir?
Okay, so let me just confess one thing. I mean, so far I have not taken any particular subject to the first year and second year. Generally, my students are final year students and then the ME students, and yes, of course, PhD students. So what you are saying is correct. I mean, so basic idea at the first year and the second year is that we want the students to learn some basic understanding. So over there, maybe you cannot directly take this open-ended questions or those kind of thing, but you can obviously design question in such a way that learning can come out from them, right? So that okay, let's say I'll just give you one example because this experiment actually I have done with my son actually. So so and other couple of like school going kids also. So let's say when we try to like defining, let's say Pythagoras theorem, that okay, you have to see the Pythagoras theorem. So Pythagoras theorem is very simple. I mean, you just mention them thing, okay, a square is equal to b square is equal to like a square plus b square is equal to c square. So that is what is like, and you draw them right angle triangle, and then you tell them that this is a side, b side, and this is c side. So this thing, but this is a learning. I mean, this is just kind of like a remember, but how to apply that? Now, how you can actually like convert this into like theorem into like the in application. So then you have to design certain question like that. Okay, let's say I have this is kind of like a wall dimension I have. So I have to calculate that the painting that I need to do. So what kind of like a area we need to cover through it. And let's say this I have to do it with a multiple color. So how basically with the different shades, especially if you given to you is that like a right angle triangle, that how you will be able to fit into that. So can you suggest any idea on that thing, and then can you try to calculate this kind of like a area? So with this particular exercise, I mean, lots of like a thinking happens. They come up with a lots of like a solution. They give you some idea that okay, no, this is how you have to keep. So you can cover it with like a two basically triangle, maybe three triangle. So that is what is like I may say that design thinking is all about. Like you need to keep give them some platform to think about it. And so this is a very basic thing, but still you can bring lots of innovation, and that is where once you start practicing this design thinking principle, I'm sure that you will come up with a many those kind of assignments and ideas.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. This is Deepak Sinha from Mukesh Patel School of Technology, Mumbai.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, I have a question. Like when we were going through this the particular design thinking, okay, uh, what approach like we have developed is it cannot be implemented in a short while. As far as my understanding is concerned, it
True.
takes time to
Yes.
implement it. So, what are the precautions or some steps that we can take so
Mhm.
that it can be implemented in a faster way, at least, or some precautions or some important steps that you can suggest, sir?
Okay. So, I mean, as you have rightly said, that it is not like, the complete kind of like, I mean, say the final solution we can come up with, I mean, within a time. It is always like, going back and forth and then improving based on, in fact, like, the feedback. So, if you remember, I have shown you that lesson plan. So, this lesson plan is maybe, I guess, it's the fourth or a fifth revision so far. So first of all, we set certain kind of like a objective. Okay. So our first objective was that we wanted to make sure that the constructive approach is taken for teaching. So this was our first objective. So can we put those particular like okay, if when we say the constructive approach, so what is constructive approach? Okay, so these are the things that we need to put it, that okay, when this particular module is going to take it up, how this particular module is going to take it up, which particular methodology is good for this particular module or a concept. So if we put those things on a paper, then it will be like more clearer to the teacher as well as the students, that this is how I'm going to run. So that's how we started. Okay, so our first objective was kind of like a fulfill. Then when we implement those things, then again we get a feedback from the students or from the faculty member. Oh, now sir, that okay, we have to also at the end of the semester we have to go through those kind of like COPO mapping exercise. Can we also include those things into that thing? Okay, so then again we include on this thing. So likewise, it is always keep evolving, and still I'm getting lots of feedback about those kind of like a forms also, that okay, no, this particular part is unnecessary, we can remove that, or we can put it that thing. So it's no one shot game, it is like a continuously you have to play, and then based on that gathering. But what within a decided time frame you can do is that it's certain objectives that you can set, and you make sure that within that time frame the objectives are like satisfied. So our objective was to have more constructive approach. So that constructive approach has been like now evolving, and it is there. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I think it is true even in the case of like a software or this thing, right? So even in the software, you see that thing, multiple kind of like versions, revisions comes in, and even for the product also. So I can give you one particular product about like a mobile phone. So more and more features comes in. So I don't think so that it is possible to just come up with a one particular product in a one time. Yeah, maybe in some cases, but very rare cases. Yeah.
Yeah, very true, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Dear participants, please feel free to unmute yourself. I hope there are no more questions.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful session, sir. Please accept our token of gratitude from Sardar Patel Institute of Technology and our Atal FDP team. So we'd like to thank you for sparing time and conducting this interesting session in our FDP. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So your work and the implementation and the experiences, all whatever you have shared, so that was very informative. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So with this session, we have reached to our lunch break. So we can have a 30 minutes lunch break, and our next session is scheduled at 2 o'clock. So I request all participants to join back by 2 p.m.
So I'll be leaving the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.